When my boss Marcus slid that contract across his desk, cutting my $95,000 salary in half to pay for his new golden boy hire, I smiled and signed it. But what I did next destroyed his entire plan and cost the company millions. This is how I turned the most humiliating moment of my career into the sweetest revenge I've ever tasted. The moment Marcus called my name from his corner office, I knew something was wrong. His voice had that fake cheerful tone managers use right before they ruin your life. "I'm Jessica Miller, and I've been the top investment advisor at Sterling Financial for 6 years straight, bringing in more client revenue than anyone else on our 12-person team." Walking toward his office that Tuesday morning, I noticed how Marcus suddenly became very interested in organizing the papers on his desk, refusing to make eye contact as I approached. "Close the door behind you," he said, still not looking up. That's when my stomach dropped. In 6 years, Marcus had never asked me to close his door unless someone was getting fired or demoted. I sat down in the leather chair across from his mahogany desk, the same desk I'd helped him pick out when he got promoted over me 2 years ago, despite my better sales numbers. "Jessica, we need to discuss some exciting changes happening in our department." The word, exciting, dripped from his mouth like poison. He opened a manila folder and pulled out a crisp white contract with my name typed at the top. "We're bringing in some fresh talent to help expand our capabilities." Fresh talent. I'd heard that phrase before, right before they pushed out Linda Martinez to make room for Marcus's college buddy. The numbers hit me like a punch to the gut. My current salary of $95,000 slashed to $47,500. 50% gone just like that. But Marcus wasn't done delivering his masterpiece of corporate cruelty. "Now, I know this seems like a big adjustment," he continued, finally meeting my eyes with what I can only describe as practiced sympathy. "But think of it as an investment in your future here. Bradley Thompson is joining us as senior advisor, and you'll have the incredible opportunity to mentor him." Mentor him. Translation: train your replacement while we pay him your money. Bradley will be working closely with your top accounts, the Henderson Portfolio, Williams Family Trust, and the Morrison Estate. You'll help him understand the nuances of high-net-worth client management. My 3 biggest clients, worth over $8 million combined, were being handed to a stranger like party favors. These weren't just account numbers to me. Mrs. Henderson called me every Sunday to check her late husband's pension status, and the Williams twins trusted me with their college fund decisions. "This is temporary, right?" I asked, though we both knew the answer. Marcus's smile widened, showing those perfectly white veneers he'd gotten with his promotion bonus. "Let's see how the transition goes. Market conditions are tough and we all need to make sacrifices for the team." Sacrifices. Funny how his salary wasn't being sacrificed, or his corner office, or his company car. I stared at the contract, my hands trembling slightly as I held the document that would either destroy my financial stability or force me to walk away from everything I'd built. The silence stretched between us like a loaded weapon, and I could see Marcus getting uncomfortable with my lack of immediate compliance. "What happens if I don't sign this?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke from a fire that was about to consume everything. Marcus leaned back in his chair, and for the first time since I'd entered his office, his mask of fake concern slipped completely off his face. "Well, Jessica, I'd hate for us to have to reconsider your position here entirely." The threat was delivered with surgical precision, quiet enough to maintain plausible deniability, clear enough that I understood exactly what he meant. "Sign the contract or lose everything. You see, with Bradley coming on board, we're restructuring the entire advisory team around a more collaborative approach." Collaborative. That was rich coming from the man who'd stolen credit for my Morrison Estate strategy at last quarter's board meeting. "Your current role might not align with our new direction if you're not willing to be flexible." I felt my face flush with anger, but I kept my voice steady. "How long do I have to decide?" Marcus glanced at his Rolex, another perk of his promotion, and pretended to consider my question like he was doing me a favor. "I'll need your answer by Friday morning. Bradley starts Monday and we want to begin the transition immediately." 3 days. 3 days to choose between financial ruin and professional suicide. I stood up, legs somehow supporting me despite feeling like they were made of water. "I'll get back to you," I said, proud that my voice didn't crack. As I reached for the door handle, Marcus delivered his final blow. "Oh, and Jessica? This conversation stays between us until you've made your decision. We don't want to create unnecessary anxiety in the office." Unnecessary anxiety. Like my anxiety about paying my mortgage or keeping my mom in her assisted living facility wasn't necessary. Like the anxiety of my team members who'd be wondering if they were next wasn't worth considering. Walking back to my desk felt like a death march. My cubicle, yes, cubicle while Marcus enjoyed his corner office, suddenly felt like a prison cell. I opened my laptop and stared at the spreadsheet showing my monthly expenses. $2,800 mortgage, $1,200 for mom's care facility, $450 car payment, $300 for groceries and utilities. The math was brutal and simple. A 50% pay cut meant choosing between keeping my house and keeping my mother in decent care. Around me, my colleagues continued their normal Tuesday routines, completely unaware that their supposedly successful teammate was being systematically destroyed in the office 20 feet away. Sarah from accounting waved cheerfully as she passed, probably thinking I was working on another big client proposal instead of calculating how long I could survive on half my income. I pulled up my email and started typing a message to my mom, then deleted it. How do you tell the woman who raised you alone after dad died that you might not be able to afford her medical care anymore? How do you explain that loyalty and hard work mean nothing when corporate politics decide your fate? That's when I remembered the business card tucked in my wallet from 2 months ago. Richard Cross, former Sterling client who'd transferred to Pinnacle Wealth Management after we'd botched his retirement rollover. He'd mentioned they were always looking for good advisors, had even said I should call if I ever wanted a change. At the time I'd laughed it off. Why would I leave Sterling when I was their top performer? Now, staring at that contract on my desk, Richard's words echoed in my mind like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. But calling a competitor felt like crossing a line I'd never thought I'd cross. Like admitting that 6 years of dedication and success meant absolutely nothing to the company I'd given everything to. The afternoon crawled by in slow motion, each tick of the clock bringing me closer to a decision that would define the rest of my career. Friday morning arrived like a sentencing hearing, and I walked into Marcus's office carrying a decision that would surprise everyone, including myself. "I'll sign the contract," I said, watching his face light up with victory as I placed the signed document on his desk. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd spent Thursday night making 3 phone calls that would turn his celebration into a nightmare. "Excellent choice, Jessica. I knew you'd see reason." His smugness was so thick I could practically taste it. "Bradley will be here Monday for orientation, and I'd like you to personally walk him through the Henderson and Williams accounts. Show him your filing system, introduce him to the clients, the whole 9 yards. The whole 9 yards of handing over my life's work to a stranger." "Of course," I replied with a smile that probably looked more genuine than it felt. "I want to make sure he has everything he needs to succeed." Marcus nodded approvingly, completely missing the double meaning in my words. Success, after all, could be measured in many different ways. "I've scheduled a client meeting for Tuesday. You, me, Bradley, and Mrs. Henderson. Just to make the transition smooth." Mrs. Henderson, 82 years old, widow of a steel worker, trusting us with her husband's life insurance money that was supposed to last her remaining years. The thought of Marcus parading her around like a trophy for his new hire made my blood boil, but I kept my expression neutral. "That sounds perfect. I'm sure she'll love meeting Bradley." What I didn't mention was the conversation I'd had with Mrs. Henderson Thursday evening, where I'd explained exactly what was happening to her account and why. Her response had been far more colorful than her usual polite demeanor. Marcus leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying what he thought was my complete surrender. "You know, Jessica, this attitude is exactly why you'll thrive in your new role. Flexibility is so important in this business. Flexibility. Like a yoga pose designed to break your spine. I've always believed in doing what's best for the clients," I said, and for once I meant every word. "Their interests should always come first, don't you think?" Marcus nodded enthusiastically, completely oblivious to the trap he was walking into. "Absolutely. Client satisfaction is our top priority here at Sterling." His words would be remembered differently very soon. I stood to leave, then paused at the door as if struck by a sudden thought. "Oh, Marcus, I've been reviewing the Morrison estate files to prepare Bradley, and I noticed something interesting in their trust agreement. There's a specific clause about advisor changes that might affect the transition." Marcus looked up from his computer, suddenly interested. "What kind of clause?" "Nothing serious," I said casually. "Just some legal language about notification requirements." I'll make sure Bradley understands all the details. I left his office before he could ask more questions, knowing that curiosity would eat at him all weekend. Walking back to my desk, I felt lighter than I had in days. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard Cross at Pinnacle. Contract ready for Monday's signature. Welcome to the team, Jessica. The beautiful irony was that Marcus thought he'd won by breaking me down and forcing my compliance. He had no idea that his victory was about to become the most expensive mistake Sterling Financial had ever made. Monday morning brought Bradley Thompson through our office doors like a golden retriever wearing a $1,000 suit, all enthusiasm and perfectly styled hair that probably cost more than most people's grocery budget. Marcus personally escorted him around the office, introducing him to everyone as our new senior advisor, while I sat at my desk pretending to organize client files. The introduction felt like watching someone show off a shiny new toy while throwing the old one in the trash. Jessica, Marcus called out, his voice carrying that forced cheerfulness that made my skin crawl. Come meet Bradley. I walked over with my best professional smile, the same one I'd perfected during 6 years of client meetings and office politics. Bradley extended his hand with the confidence of someone who'd never had to fight for anything in his life. Jessica, I've heard so much about your client work here. Marcus tells me you're going to help me get up to speed. His handshake was firm but soft. No calluses, no real work ever done with those hands. I'm really excited to learn from someone with your experience. Experience that was about to walk out the door with me, but he didn't need to know that yet. I'm looking forward to working with you, I lied smoothly. Your reputation precedes you. What I'd actually heard about Bradley through industry connections was that he'd been let go from his previous firm for promising clients unrealistic returns and cutting corners on due diligence. But Marcus had been so desperate to poach him that he'd apparently skipped the reference checks. Marcus beamed like a proud parent. Why don't you show Bradley to his office, the corner space next to mine, and then you can start going through the Henderson portfolio. Corner office. Of course. I'd been in a cubicle for 6 years while this newcomer got premium real estate on day one. The message was crystal clear about who Sterling valued more. Bradley's new office was twice the size of my workspace, with windows overlooking the city and furniture that still had price tags hidden under the cushions. Nice setup, I commented, watching him settle behind a desk that probably cost more than my monthly salary. You'll love the view during client calls. About those clients, Bradley said, pulling out a leather notebook that looked expensive enough to feed a family for a week. I've been doing some research on the accounts I'll be taking over. The Henderson portfolio seems pretty conservative for someone her age. I'm thinking we could boost returns significantly with some strategic repositioning. My heart sank. Mrs. Henderson was 82 years old and living on a fixed income. Her conservative portfolio was designed to preserve capital and provide steady dividends, not chase aggressive growth that could wipe out her life savings. She's been very happy with the current approach, I said carefully. Bradley waved dismissively. Happy doesn't always mean optimal. I've seen portfolios like hers before. Too much focus on safety, not enough on opportunity. She could be making twice what she's earning now. Twice the returns meant twice the risk, something he'd apparently failed to consider or simply didn't care about. What about the Williams family trust? I asked, dreading his answer. The Williams twins were starting college next year, and their parents had specifically requested low-risk investments to ensure tuition money would be available when needed. College funds are perfect for aggressive growth strategies, Bradley said, scribbling notes in his fancy notebook. 18 months to graduation gives us plenty of time to maximize returns before they need the cash. My hands clenched involuntarily. 18 months wasn't plenty of time for aggressive strategies. It was exactly the wrong time frame for taking risks with education money. And the Morrison estate? I asked, knowing this answer would be the most telling. The Morrison estate was worth over $3 million, but it came with specific legal requirements about conservative management and annual distributions to multiple beneficiaries. Bradley's eyes lit up like he'd just spotted a winning lottery ticket. Now that's where we can really make some moves. $3 million in mostly bonds and blue-chip stocks? We're talking about serious money being completely wasted on safe investments. I'm thinking emerging markets, cryptocurrency exposure, maybe some leveraged real estate investments. I almost choked. The Morrison estate had strict fiduciary requirements that would make Bradley's aggressive approach not just risky but potentially illegal. "Have you reviewed the trust documents?" I asked. "Marcus said you'd handle all the paperwork details. I'm more of a big-picture strategy guy." Big-picture strategy guy. Translation: he wanted the glory and commissions without bothering with the legal responsibilities that came with managing other people's life savings. "I'll make sure you have all the documentation you need," I said, standing to leave before I said something that would blow my cover. Tuesday's meeting with Mrs. Henderson should be interesting. As I walked back to my cubicle, I realized that Marcus hadn't just cut my salary in half. He'd replaced me with someone who could potentially destroy years of careful relationship building and put my client's financial security at risk. The conversation I'd overheard between Bradley and Marcus during lunch made it even worse. Bradley had bragged about his ability to shake up conservative portfolios and generate real returns, while Marcus encouraged his aggressive approach as exactly what Sterling needed to compete. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Henderson. "Dear Jessica, I've been thinking about our conversation. Should I be worried about this new advisor?" I typed back quickly, "Trust your instincts, Margaret. You've always made smart decisions." The truth was becoming clear. This wasn't just about my salary anymore. This was about protecting people who trusted me with their life savings from someone who saw them as nothing more than commission opportunities. Tuesday's client meeting with Mrs. Henderson became the moment everything Marcus had planned started crumbling right in front of his eyes. Walking into the conference room, I could see Bradley had prepared a full presentation with charts and graphs designed to dazzle an elderly widow into risky investments she didn't need. Marcus sat at the head of the table like a proud father about to watch his son hit a home run, completely unaware that he was about to witness a spectacular strikeout. "Mrs. Henderson, it's wonderful to see you again," I said warmly as she entered wearing her usual navy blue dress and pearl necklace. At 82, Margaret Henderson had survived the Great Depression, raised 4 children alone after her husband died in Vietnam, and built a small fortune through careful saving and smart decisions. She wasn't the helpless old lady Marcus and Bradley apparently thought she was. "Jessica, dear, always a pleasure." Her voice was steady and clear, nothing frail about it. She nodded politely to Marcus and Bradley but kept her eyes on me. "I understand there are some proposed changes to my account that we need to discuss." Bradley jumped in immediately, pulling up his flashy presentation on the conference room screen. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm Bradley Thompson, your new senior advisor. I've been reviewing your portfolio, and I'm excited to share some opportunities to significantly increase your returns." The word significantly hung in the air like a red flag. "Your current allocation is extremely conservative," Bradley continued, clicking through slides filled with colorful pie charts. "We're talking about potentially doubling your annual income through strategic repositioning into growth sectors." Marcus nodded approvingly, clearly impressed with Bradley's polished delivery. Mrs. Henderson listened quietly, her weathered hands folded in her lap. When Bradley finished his presentation with a flourish about maximizing potential in today's dynamic market, she turned to me with raised eyebrows. "Jessica, what do you think about these suggestions?" The room fell silent. This was my moment to either betray my client or blow up my remaining time at Sterling. "Mrs. Henderson, you've always told me that preserving your husband Harold's life insurance money was your top priority. These investments would put that principle at significant risk for the possibility of higher returns." Bradley's face flushed red. "Jessica, I think you're being overly cautious here. Mrs. Henderson deserves to know about all her options." Marcus shot me a warning look that could have frozen water. "Oh, I absolutely want to know about my options," Mrs. Henderson said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "For instance, I'd like to know why no one asked my permission before assigning me a new advisor. And I'd like to know why Mr. Thompson here thinks a woman who survived the stock market crash of 1987 doesn't understand the difference between growth and speculation." The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Bradley stammered something about client service improvements, but Mrs. Henderson wasn't finished. "I'd also like to know why Jessica, who has never lost me a penny in 6 years, is suddenly not qualified to manage my account alone." Marcus tried to recover. "Mrs. Henderson, we're simply expanding our team to provide enhanced service levels. Jessica will still be involved in your account management." His voice had that fake reassurance tone that fooled no one. "Enhanced service," Mrs. Henderson repeated slowly. Is that what we're calling it when you cut your best advisor's salary in half and expect her to train her replacement? The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus went pale, clearly wondering how she knew about my pay cut. I think there's been some miscommunication here, Marcus said weakly, but Mrs. Henderson stood up, gathering her purse with the dignity of someone who'd dealt with plenty of men trying to manage her money over the years. There's been no miscommunication, Mr. Davidson. I understand perfectly well what's happening here. She turned to me with genuine warmth. Jessica, I'll be transferring my account to Pinnacle Wealth Management effective immediately. I trust you can handle the paperwork from your new position there. Bradley's mouth fell open. Marcus looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Mrs. Henderson, please, let's discuss this. I'm sure we can address any concerns you might have, Marcus pleaded, his professional composure finally cracking. My only concern was ensuring my money was managed by someone who puts my interests first, she replied calmly. Jessica has done that for 6 years. You've made it clear that your interests lie elsewhere. She shook my hand warmly. I'll call you at Pinnacle tomorrow to set up the transfer. After she left, the conference room felt like a crime scene. Marcus stared at the table while Bradley shuffled through his useless presentation slides. How did she know about Pinnacle? Marcus asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. People talk, I said simply. Especially when they feel their trust has been betrayed. Marcus looked up at me with dawning realization, understanding for the first time that this wasn't just about one client meeting gone wrong. What have you done, Jessica? The question sounded more like an accusation, but his voice lacked conviction. He was starting to understand that his perfectly orchestrated plan was falling apart, piece by piece. I've done exactly what you trained me to do, I replied. I've put my clients' interests first. Standing up to leave, I added, the Williams family called this morning. They'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss their account as well. Should I tell them you'll be handling it personally? The look of panic that crossed Marcus's face told me everything I needed to know. His golden boy hire was about to become the most expensive mistake Sterling Financial had ever made. Walking into Sterling Financial for the last time felt like visiting a crime scene where I was both the victim and the detective who'd solved the case. My resignation letter sat in an envelope in my briefcase, along with documentation that would expose exactly how Marcus had orchestrated this entire disaster. But first, I had one final performance to give in his office. Marcus, we need to talk, I said, closing his door behind me. He looked up from his computer with the expression of a man who'd spent the night calculating how much money Mrs. Henderson's departure would cost him. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept well after yesterday's meeting. Jessica, about Mrs. Henderson. I think there might have been some misunderstanding about the transition process. His voice carried the desperate tone of someone trying to negotiate their way out of a sinking ship. Perhaps we moved too quickly with Bradley's involvement. I sat down across from his desk and pulled out my resignation letter, placing it squarely in front of him. There's no misunderstanding, Marcus. I'm resigning effective immediately. His face went through several color changes as he processed what this meant for his remaining client relationships. You can't just quit without notice. Your contract requires 2 weeks for director-level positions. He was grasping for any leverage he could find, but his voice lacked conviction. We both knew that after cutting my salary in half, he'd forfeited any moral authority to demand notice periods. Actually, my original contract with Sterling contains a clause about compensation reductions exceeding 25%. Any reduction above that threshold voids standard termination requirements. I watched understanding dawn on his face as he realized his own greed had eliminated his legal protections. Besides, I continued, I don't think you want me here for 2 more weeks, considering what happened after I left yesterday. Marcus's expression shifted from confusion to dread. What happened after you left? Well, the Williams family called to schedule an emergency meeting about their trust fund. Apparently, Bradley contacted them directly yesterday afternoon with some very interesting investment proposals. Marcus started reaching for his phone, but I held up a hand. Don't bother calling them. They've already decided to transfer their accounts to Pinnacle. The color drained completely from Marcus's face. Both accounts. But that's over $2 million in assets under management. His voice cracked slightly as he calculated the commission losses. And then there's the Morrison estate situation, I said, watching him grip his desk like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I had a very enlightening conversation with their attorney this morning. Apparently, there's a specific clause in their trust agreement that I forgot to mention to Bradley. What kind of clause? Marcus whispered, though I could tell he already suspected the answer wouldn't be good news. The kind that requires written approval from their designated financial advisor before any investment strategy changes can be implemented. The kind that specifically names me as that designated advisor until I provide written consent to transfer authority. I let that information sink in for a moment. The kind that makes Bradley's aggressive investment plans completely impossible to execute. Marcus slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. How much of the estate are we talking about? He asked the question like a man requesting details about his own execution. 3.2 million, plus the annual distributions to 12 different beneficiaries. All of which require my signature to modify. I stood up, straightening my jacket. Signatures I obviously won't be providing from my new position at Pinnacle Wealth Management. This is insane, Marcus said, finally showing some fight. You can't just torpedo the entire department because you're unhappy about a salary adjustment. This affects other people's jobs. You're absolutely right, I agreed. It does affect other people's jobs. Like Sarah Chin in client services, who's been doing the work of 3 people since you laid off half her team to afford Bradley's signing bonus. Like Mike Rodriguez in compliance, who's been warning you for months about the corner cutting that's going to get Sterling in trouble with regulators. Marcus tried interrupting, but I wasn't finished. It affects people like Mrs. Henderson, who trusted us with her deceased husband's life insurance money and deserved better than being handed off to someone who saw her as a commission opportunity. It affects the Williams twins, who need their college fund to actually be there when they graduate, not gambled away on cryptocurrency speculation. We can fix this, Marcus said desperately. Come back at your full salary. We'll restructure Bradley's role. We'll make this work. But his offer sounded hollow even to him. The only thing you can fix now is how you treat the employees who are still here, I replied. Because word spreads fast in this industry and everyone's going to know exactly why Sterling lost over $5 million in client assets in 1 week. I walked toward the door, then paused for my final revelation. Oh, and Marcus, that reference check you never did on Bradley? You might want to look into why he really left Morrison and Associates. Turns out promising 90-year-old widows 30% annual returns doesn't always work out well for anyone involved. 6 months later, I was pulling into the parking lot of my corner office at Pinnacle Wealth Management, where I'd just been promoted to Senior Vice President of Client Relations. My salary had increased 40% from my original Sterling position, and I managed a team of 8 advisors who actually understood that client trust was worth more than quarterly commission numbers. Marcus had been quietly let go 3 months after my departure, following an investigation into his department's practices triggered by client complaints. Bradley lasted exactly 6 weeks before Sterling decided his aggressive approach wasn't compatible with their risk management standards. The real victory wasn't watching them fail, it was building something better. Mrs. Henderson sent me a thank you card last month, telling me her portfolio had grown steadily while staying completely safe. The Williams twins both got into their first choice colleges with their education funds intact. The Morrison estate continued providing for 12 families exactly as intended. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's proving they were wrong about your worth and building a life that makes their opinions irrelevant. Sometimes standing up for yourself doesn't just change your career, it changes how you see yourself forever. And sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing turns out to be the smartest business decision you've ever made.